Behold the battlefield. Witness as the light glints off its textured surface, and bask in the glory of recycling at its finest. My total cost? Some glue, a bit of paint, that flocking we made in the last episode, and a few scavenged materials like double corrugated cardboard and a piece of plywood I rescued from the side of the road. I might be a cheapskate, but I try to be an environmentally conscious cheapskate. Reduce, reuse, but make your battlefield look awesome. Welcome to this part 2 of my Kill Team board video series. I have picked up a piece of plywood. See, plywood. And my plan is to turn that into a Kill Team board. Okay, my camera work is going to suck because I cannot hold a camera and cut. This is not going to happen. On with the show. Okay, so as you can see, I have measured out the dimensions of a Kill Team. It is 22 by 30 inches, and I've given it a border of 1 inch going all around. Okay, the time has now come to take this saw and do some cutting. Well, I could probably use some of my power tools, but hey, who knows? A lot of sawing later, I now have a Kill Team size board. Okay, that's pretty much it for the garage work. One thing to note, I did cut these bits at an angle. I will show you what we're going to do with them upstairs. Okay, see you in a bit. I started with a piece of 10mm plywood. It looked so downtrodden that I had to give it a new lease on life. But here's a pro tip. Some places are happy to give away scrap wood if you haul it off. I cut this piece down to 24 by 32 inches, which gives a nice 1 inch border around the standard 22 by 30 inch Kill Team area. It's perfect for a little idea that I've got for the extra space. After it was cut, I marked off 1 inch squares along the border and then cut corrugated pieces slightly smaller. For me it was about 1mm less. Don't ask me to convert that to inches, but if you're an American, I guess it's about a toothpick's thickness smaller. I glued these squares down with a tiny gap between each one, using my markings to keep it neat. But I know you're going to ask me, why do I go through all this trouble? Well, I was thinking it would create a nice idea for when you're working at deployment. No more arguing about tape measures. You just count along the edge and yeah, simple and effective. Okay, here's where things get messy and fun. I mixed wood glue with water in a 1-to-1 ratio and grabbed some scrunched up kitchen paper towels. I glued the paper towels onto the cardboard squares, making sure to wrinkle for that rough weathered stone look. After that, I saturated them with watered down glue to lock in the texture. Here's a bit of a tip. Embrace the mess. Trust the process. The Grimdark aesthetic thrives on imperfection. For the texture on the main board, I had to use what was on hand. A mix of beach sand with a little bit of sawdust. Living on the beach does have its perks, although trying to explain why you scooping sand into a bucket can be a bit interesting. If you're landlocked, no worries. It's actually better to use dried, sifted soil. I brushed down watered down glue onto the board and sprinkled the sand mixture, making sure to avoid the border. Once the glue was dried and the loose sand was brushed off, I went over the surface again with watered down glue to lock everything in place. This step is actually kind of critical. You don't want your battlefield turning into a sandbox mid-game. Then I left it to dry overnight. It seems patience is not just a virtue, it's actually essential for this hobby. And watching glue dry is apparently a big part of that. And now for the satisfying part, the part where everything seems to come together, base coating. I used slightly watered down black craft paint and covered every square millimeter of the project. I make sure there's no gaps. The Grimdark doesn't exactly tolerate bright plywood picking through. And once again I leave it to dry. By this point I'm realizing that 90% of this hobby is just waiting for things to dry. And now here comes the magic, dry brushing. For this I used a pretty basic color scheme. My aim is to go for a generic outdoor area, and I used burnt umber, brown, ochre, a little bit of black and white. Cheap poster paint seemed to work well for this. Usually you start working at the darkest color at about 80% coverage, then progressively use less as you lighten the shade. You can mix on the fly here, there's no need to be exact with this part. This usually creates a natural earthy type look. But of course you can choose any palette, like red for Mars, neon for an alien world, or purple if you're feeling a little extra Slaneshi tonight. Here I went for generic for versatility. The time has come to bring a little bit of life to our battlefield. I'll be using the flocking we made last time. I added patches to simulate paths and a little bit of grassless area. For this you just paint down a little bit of watered down glue onto the spots you want grass, sprinkle on the flocking, trying to avoid the border. Just let it dry, and don't do what I do. I sneezed. I had frickin' flocking everywhere. Once the flocking was dry, I brushed off the loose bits and gave the board a light misting of water. Then I added a thin layer of watered down glue to really just lock it into place. This step ensures the flocking can survive the most intense battles or accidental table bumps. Now just a bit of cleanup. I cleaned up the edges. Because my dry brushing had wandered onto the border, I rebase coated it black, and then I dry brush from dark grey to light grey. I did add a little touch of ochre to warm up the shade. This made the border look like rough stone blocks. Kind of frames the board nicely. And there you got it. We're done. And there you have it. A custom kill team board that's easy on the wallet and big on tabletop impact. Whether you're fighting in an Imperial outpost or a chaos infested wasteland, this board will have you covered. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay crafty.